The factory lights of Varnak Primus flickered like dying candles, coughing out their last bursts of yellow glow before surrendering to the darkness. Garen wiped grime from his face with an oil-stained sleeve, breathing in the chemical stench of the manufactorum. It was another endless shift, another day of servitude under the eyes of the Imperium. He was just one among thousands of workers, faceless and forgotten. The walls dripped with condensation, and the machines screamed louder than the thoughts in his head. The overseers barked orders, their cybernetic eyes scanning for the slightest hint of idleness. Garen had long stopped thinking of himself as a man. He was a gear, a cog in an empire that never slept. That night, after the sirens marked the end of the shift, Garen didn't go home. He couldn't. His mind was too restless, too full of voices. For weeks now he had been hearing whispers in his sleep. Soft, seductive murmurs calling from the dark corners of his dreams. They spoke of liberation, of hidden power, of a world beyond the Emperor's iron grip. At first he thought it was madness, but madness began to sound more comforting than truth. So he followed the whispers, down through the broken tunnels beneath the factory, past the rusted pipes and leaking coolant streams. The deeper he went, the more the air seemed to pulse, alive, heavy with a presence he could feel on his skin. Then he found them. A circle of hooded figures, their faces hidden behind cracked respirators, chanting words that twisted the air around them. A faint purple glow shimmered from the floor, forming runes that looked like they were carved from shadow itself. Garen froze, terrified yet mesmerized. One of them turned. Another lost soul seeking meaning. The voice rasped. I don't know what I'm seeking, Garen stammered. I just want more than this life. The figure stepped closer, removing his hood. His skin was pale and scarred, his eyes glowing faintly red. Then you've come to the right place. The Emperor has forgotten you, but the dark gods remember. And just like that, Garen's life changed forever. The initiation was brutal. They made him drink from a chalice filled with thick, black liquid that burned like fire going down his throat. He felt his veins ignite, his mind open. Voices, hundreds of them, whispered at once, promising him everything he had ever desired. Power, freedom, purpose. The next morning he woke up in his hab block drenched in sweat, his ears ringing. But something was different. The world looked sharper. The air hummed. He felt alive for the first time. Days turned into weeks. Garen's devotion grew. He met others like him, broken workers, outcasts, criminals, all bound by one thing, their hatred for the Imperium. Their leader, Malgor, was a towering figure with veins that shimmered faintly under his skin. He claimed to speak directly to the Chaos gods. We are the forgotten, Malgor said one night, his voice booming in the underground hall. But soon the galaxy will remember our names. Chaos is rising. The false Emperor's light will fade, and the true gods will reign. The cult roared in agreement. Garen roared with them. He didn't notice how their faces began to change, how some of them grew patches of scaled skin or eyes that glowed in the dark. He ignored the feeling that something inside him was wrong. One night during a blood ritual, Garen saw something in the shadows, a shape watching him, its form shifting and melting like liquid metal. It smiled without a mouth. And in that smile, Garen felt the first hint of fear. But by then it was too late. He had been marked. The mark burned faintly on his chest as he slept that night. A whisper echoed in his mind. You are chosen, Garen. You belong to us now. He woke up screaming. The drums of war had begun to echo across Varnak Primus. Rumors spread that the Astra Militarum were coming. Garen's fellow cultists prepared, whispering excitedly of bloodshed and glory. Malgor promised them victory, but Garen's dreams had changed. The whispers no longer comforted him. They laughed, mocking, cruel, and in the darkness, he began to realize the truth. The dark gods never give without taking. Still, there was no way out. Once you've sworn yourself to chaos, you belong to it, forever. And so beneath the flickering lights of a dying hive world, Garen picked up his laser gun, painted his mark in blood, and prepared for the war to come. He had wanted freedom. What he would get instead was a nightmare. The air in the underground tunnels of Varnak Primus was thick with sweat, incense and fear. Garen's heart hammered as he loaded his laser gun with trembling hands. All around him, chaos worshippers chanted in the dark, their voices rising and falling like waves of madness. Flickering torches cast distorted shadows on the walls, shadows that seemed to move even when no one did. Above them, the city burned. The Astra Militarum had arrived. Garen could hear the distant thud of artillery shaking the earth, each explosion sending a rain of dust and debris from the ceiling. The cult's leader, Malgor, stood at the front of the chamber, towering over his followers like a monstrous prophet. His body had changed in recent days. His flesh shimmered with shifting colors. His voice carried an echo not entirely human. "Brothers!" Malgor roared, raising a jagged blade that seemed to drip with molten light. "The hour of deliverance is upon us. The Imperium seeks to crush us, but they cannot destroy what chaos has already claimed. Blood for the gods, death to the false emperor." The cult howled in response, pounding their chests, raising their weapons. Garen shouted with them, but his voice was hollow. His mind was a storm of doubt. The whispers in his head had grown louder. They no longer promised freedom. They commanded obedience. He could feel something crawling beneath his skin, a presence watching him from within. As the chanting grew louder, the room began to tremble. The runes etched into the floor glowed crimson, bathing everything in an unholy light. The air turned heavy, vibrating with unnatural energy. It was time. The summoning ritual. Garen had seen Malgor perform lesser rituals before, sacrifices of flesh and prayer. But this was different. This one required more power, more blood. Malgor stepped into the center of the rune circle and raised his blade high. Two cultists dragged forward a bound prisoner, an Imperial clerk they had captured days before. His eyes were wide with terror, his mouth gagged. "For chaos undivided," Malgor bellowed. The blade came down. The clerk's scream was drowned out by the roar of energy that burst from the circle. The ground cracked open, and a wind that smelled of rot and ozone howled through the chamber. The torches blew out. The shadows deepened until they swallowed the light. Something was coming through. Garen fell to his knees, clutching his head. His thoughts burned. His vision swirled with impossible colors. He saw glimpses of other worlds, places where reality twisted like molten glass, where creatures with too many eyes sang in the void. Then came the voice, deep, cold, amused. "Little worms, you call to the warp, yet you do not understand its price." The air solidified into a shape, tall, dark, and shifting like smoke given life. Its presence was suffocating. The cultists cried out in ecstasy and terror. Malgor laughed madly. "A demon? A true servant of the gods. We are blessed." The demon's voice was like a whisper made of thunder. "You are food." Before anyone could react, it moved. The nearest cultist exploded into a cloud of red mist. Bones rattled against the walls. Panic broke. The chanting turned to screams. Garen stumbled backward as chaos erupted around him. "Malgor!" he shouted. "You said we'd be protected." Malgor turned, his face half melted from the energy pouring out of the warp. "Do not fear, Garen. This is transcendence." Transcendence. That was the word they used to mask horror. Garen watched as Malgor's body twisted and grew, sprouting limbs that ended in claws. His voice broke into a shriek of pain and rapture. Garen ran. He sprinted through the tunnels, past the howling cultists, past the flames and bodies. The world had become a nightmare. The walls were bleeding, the air itself alive with whispers. He could hear the demon's laughter behind him, a sound so vast it seemed to echo through his bones. Then he heard new sounds. Boots. Orders barked in precise Imperial code. The Astra Militarum had breached the lower tunnels. Blinding light filled the corridor as guardsmen poured in, their laser guns firing in disciplined bursts. The cultists, crazed and broken, rushed to meet them, screaming praises to the dark gods. Blood splattered the walls. The sound of gunfire was deafening. Garen dove behind a fallen pillar, gasping for breath. He peeked out just long enough to see Malgor charging the guardsmen, his monstrous form roaring, tearing through armor with claws of molten bone. But the Emperor's soldiers did not waver. "For the Emperor!" someone shouted, and a heavy bolter opened fire. The rounds tore Malgor apart, chunks of flesh and ichor painting the walls. The creature that had been there. Leader let out one last gurgling cry before collapsing into a heap of steaming meat. Garen wanted to cheer. He wanted to scream. He wanted to disappear. Instead, he crawled deeper into the shadows, clutching his lasgun like a talisman. The battle raged around him, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was the whisper in his mind, softer now, almost gentle. "You can run, Garen, but you cannot hide. You are ours." He pressed his hands to his ears, but it didn't help. The voice was inside him, crawling like worms through his thoughts. His skin itched. His heart raced. He didn't even notice when the guardsmen started sweeping the area. One of them spotted him. "Contact! There's one alive!" Garen fired wildly, hitting nothing. The laser gun clicked empty. The soldier raised his weapon. But before he could shoot, the floor beneath them cracked. A wave of psychic energy burst through the corridor, throwing everyone to the ground. Garen screamed as a blinding light filled his vision. When he opened his eyes, the soldiers were gone. The tunnel was silent. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and decay, and in front of him stood something that wore Malgor's face, but it wasn't Malgor anymore. It smiled. "You called to chaos, Garen," it said. "Now chaos answers through you." Garen tried to run, but his body wouldn't move. The shadows clung to him, wrapping around his limbs like chains. The last thing he heard before the darkness swallowed him was laughter. His own. Twisted and wrong. The kind of laughter that never really ends. The first thing Garen felt was the cold. Not the kind that bit into his skin, but the kind that reached inside him, clawing at his soul. He opened his eyes and saw nothing. Only blackness stretching in every direction. Thick and endless, like he was floating in a sea of ink. The silence pressed against his ears until he couldn't tell if he was breathing or screaming. Then came the whisper. "Welcome back, little worshipper." Garen spun around, though there was nothing to see. His voice trembled. "Where am I? What happened to me?" "You are between worlds," the voice said, smooth and cruel. "Your body lies broken in the tunnels of Varnak Primus. Your soul, however, belongs to us." Memories came flooding back. The battle. The guardsmen. The summoning gone wrong. Malgor's transformation. The explosion of psychic fire that consumed everything. He remembered running, screaming, and then darkness. "No," Garen whispered. "No, I didn't want this. I just wanted freedom." Laughter echoed around him, deep and layered, like 1,000 mouths laughing in unison. "Freedom? There is no freedom in chaos, only purpose. And your purpose, Garen, is just beginning." He tried to move, to escape, but his body felt strange, heavy and wrong. When he looked down, he screamed. His hands were not hands anymore. They were black and glistening, the flesh shifting as though alive. His reflection shimmered before him, a distorted mockery of a man. His skin pulsed with veins of light, his eyes burned red, and something inside his chest moved on its own. He fell to his knees, clutching his face. "No, Emperor, save me." The laughter grew louder. "You called to the dark gods, and now you beg for the corpse on the throne. How delightful." The darkness around him began to ripple, forming shapes, faces screaming, bodies twisting, landscapes melting and reforming in grotesque ways. The warp was alive, and it was watching him. Every breath he took seemed to feed it. And then, he saw something through the veil. A vision of the real world. The tunnels of Varnak Primus lay in ruins filled with corpses. The walls were scorched, the floor cracked. Imperial soldiers moved cautiously through the debris, their armor smeared with blood. And there, lying among the dead, was his own body, except it was moving. Garen watched in horror as his corpse twitched, the skin bubbling, the bones snapping into new shapes. The soldiers noticed. "By the Emperor, it's still alive," one shouted. But it wasn't alive. It was becoming something else. The creature that rose was him and not him, a twisted fusion of flesh and shadow. It stood on limbs that bent the wrong way, its face shifting between human and monstrous. It opened its mouth, and Garen's own scream echoed out. "You see, Garen," the voice said softly, "this is your ascension. You are blessed among mortals." He pounded his fists against the unseen walls of the void. "Please stop it. Let me go. I didn't ask for this." "Oh, but you did. You sought power. You desired meaning. Every prayer, every drop of blood, every whisper you uttered was an invitation. Chaos gives exactly what is asked, and far more than you can bear." The vision shifted. Garen's transformed body tore through the guardsmen like paper, their screams echoing through the tunnels. Bolter rounds ripped into its flesh, but it kept coming, regenerating faster than it could be harmed. It was unstoppable, unholy, and somewhere deep inside it, Garen could feel himself still conscious. Trapped. He could feel every movement, every kill, every drop of blood spilled by the creature that now bore his name. He was a prisoner inside his own body, a passenger in an endless massacre. "No," he shouted into the void. "I won't be your weapon. I won't." "You already are," the voice replied. "You will kill in our name until there's nothing left of you but devotion." Time lost all meaning. In the tunnels, days might have passed, or hours. The demon thing that Garen had become slaughtered. Imperial forces until the entire sector was declared tainted. The Inquisition arrived. Purge orders were issued. Fire consumed everything. But even as the flames swept through the tunnels, Garen didn't die. He couldn't. The last thing he saw, before the warp pulled him away, completely was his own reflection in a burning pool of blood, half man, half monster, eyes hollow with eternal suffering. Then the darkness took him again. He found himself once more in the endless void, alone. The laughter was gone now. Only silence remained, and in that silence he began to understand the truth. There was no victory in chaos, no freedom, no peace, only the endless hunger of the gods feeding on mortals too desperate to know better. He was not a hero, not a chosen one, not even a servant. He was food. The realization broke something inside him. The last piece of his humanity slipped away, and as it did, the whisper returned, soft, almost tender. Sleep now, Garen. Your purpose is fulfilled. Others will take your place. The galaxy will never run out of fools. He closed his eyes, and for a fleeting moment he wished for death. But in the grim darkness of the far future, even death is a mercy denied. And so Garen drifted forever, a whisper in the warp, a lost soul chained to the hunger of gods that would never know his name. His nightmarish existence was eternal, and the galaxy moved on. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only horror. If you enjoyed this episode and want to uncover more twisted tales from the Warhammer 40K universe, hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next descent into madness. Drop a comment below. What do you think happened to Garen's soul? Do you believe redemption exists in the warp? Or is damnation eternal? And if you're brave enough, share this video with a friend who loves dark sci-fi and chaos-fueled horror.